Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for February 28th, 2012. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is the Director of Planning for the City of Somerville, a native New Englander, current resident of Melrose, and former Director of Planning for the City of Lowell. Here in Somerville, he is responsible for all planning and community development issues, from rezoning to land reuse, commercial district revitalization, to transportation infrastructure reengineering. He and his City Hall staff affect almost every aspect of planning here in our city. A graduate of Northeastern and Syracuse Universities, he also holds a master's in city planning from MIT. It is my pleasure to welcome for his first visit to Greater Somerville, the Director of Planning, George Proakis. And welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you.
You got here a little early. I told you I was going to see you maybe up at City Hall tonight for the MBTA fare increases and service cuts meeting.
Well, I wasn't able to make it there. I do certainly get around to my share of meetings in the city, and but it was good to hear you were able to stop by.
7 nights a week you're out at city planning meetings, George?
Sometimes it feels like it, but yeah, I do have a young child at home. I do try to get back to see her in every now and then.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you, you know, for the folks watching at home, you missed a show tonight up at Somerville City Hall. The MBTA was there listening to concerned residents and different constituent groups talk about the proposed MBTA fare increases and service cuts that will directly affect a lot of us here in Somerville. But we're not going to talk about that tonight, George.
Although it is an important issue.
You are off the hook on that stuff. But, you know, everything that you do up at City Hall, you and your staff of a dozen or so folks, everything that you do up there, you don't do in a vacuum. All these outside influences can affect everything that your job is all about. In this case, the MBTA coming in and saying we're going to increase fares and we're going to cut some routes. But
well, that's right. Just because so much of what we do and so much of our long-term focus is so dependent upon Somerville as a transit-dependent community, and the value of having a city that is using transit as so much of its day-to-day activity, and as we look to our long-term goals, we're doing our best to try to reduce the demand and the need for people to drive from place to place, and decisions made by the T, decisions made at the State House affect us here, and we certainly monitor and care significantly about what happens about those things.
Well, we're lucky, and I'm not giving a plug to any politician, but we are lucky that we have a good state delegation who's up there in the forefront saying no hikes, no service cuts. And the mayor was very, very forceful tonight in saying to the MBTA, look, you know, guys, if you can come up with a plan that gives a little bit of shared pain to everybody, he'll be right behind them. But when it looks like Somerville and some of the poorer communities are being targeted with route cuts,
yes.
Whole routes. I mean, I think there were 4 of them in the city that they were talking about. I'm not going to put you on the hot seat, George.
Well, I appreciate it. But it is a concern.
It's a very much a concern, but you've been on the hot seat in many, many community meetings. You got one of the most visible and probably one of the most unrewarding jobs. I want to put it that way. Unrewarding. Is that true or false?
I think it's false, but you know, I know a lot of people struggle in the planning field of doing a position where you're out there involved representing the city and participating in the development projects, but it is rewarding in that you do see the results of what you do day to day. And right. I've been doing this about 10 years now, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I mean, I really like being on the city side of helping to look at the way that urban planning and land use and regulations and moving forward a city works together. And Somerville's probably the most exciting place I could think of being doing this work right now.
Well, it was good that you had a primer for coming into Somerville, which is a very old city. It has old infrastructure. It has old zoning code. It has all the makings of a jewel in the crown that's just waiting to be remixed. But you came down from Lowell.
Yes.
As Director of Planning up in Lowell, which had some of the same issues.
In 7 years there, we did a new comprehensive plan. We rewrote the entire zoning code and got a zoning code passed that matched the goals of that plan. We were involved in developing a transit-oriented development district that was adjacent to downtown
right.
Lowell and near their commuter rail station. A lot of similar issues in trying to create a more walkable place, a community that really could build upon its history and create something that really worked for its future.
You may or may or may not remember this, but what's the proportion in Lowell? Lowell used to be heavy industry, heavy industry. In the city, here in the city of Somerville, we know that we are primarily a residential city versus a commercial or industry. What was the proportion up in Lowell during the days that the mills were operating?
Oh, I don't know, but it was a significant part of the city.
It was probably a good 50-50 up there.
It could have been, yeah. I mean, the core of downtown was just mills packed from end to end. And I mean, really, in Lowell, what was valuable was they preserved the history of those mills over time. And in the last 10 years, over the time I was there, a lot of new industry and new housing came in to really repopulate downtown. Using these structures that have become very valuable for our future. So it was really an exciting thing.
We have a similar thing happening here in Somerville with, places like the Brick Bottom Artist Community and the Vernon Street Studios and a lot of the smaller, older industrial buildings that were along the rail lines. Those are now going through a reuse kind of model. But we have transformation underway in huge parts of the city.
Yes.
Assembly Square, Union Square, Boynton Yards, Inner Belt. You and your staff just recently completed a Porter Square rezoning and presented it to the city and basically saying, here's what we think would happen.
Yes, the planning board recommended supporting it, and the Board of Aldermen are reviewing it now. They'll be reviewing it again on the 12th of March.
Yep. So huge swaths of the city, mostly in the eastern part of the city.
For the most part, there's 365 acres on that eastern side of the city, including Assembly Square, Inner Belt, Brick Bottom, down to Boynton Yards and the southern end of Union Square that could see a real transformation in the next 20 years, and that's where we're doing a lot of study there. Which
makes sense because it's next to the capital city of the state.
Yes.
And it's a natural growth pattern, from Boston in towards Somerville and from Somerville over towards Boston.
It's also the site that's likely to see the first two of the new Green Line stations, Washington Street by Inner Belt and Brick Bottom and Prospect Street by Union Square. So those are two spots that we'll see a lot of.
It did amaze me, though, I will tell you, George, that the state, in its infinite wisdom and its agencies, actually thought of starting at the beginning when they were implementing the Green Line. Let's start at the beginning. So for those of you following at home and playing along, the Green Line, the two Green Line stops within Somerville's borders that will start off first are the Washington Street Station and the Union Square Spur.
Yes.
Well, it's at Prospect and Webster.
Yes.
Someplace in that vicinity. So, but that's great news, but that presents challenges for you.
Yeah, it does.
And when you came into the city, one of the things that the mayor plopped on your desk and said, "Here, George, finish this," was the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
That had started. You told me before we started the show, sometime in 2009.
Yes.
Yep.
And in 2009, before I started here, the mayor and the Board of Aldermen had selected representatives to participate in a comprehensive plan steering committee. There were 60 representatives from a number of community groups, a number appointed by aldermen, a number appointed by the mayor, and they were brought together in these meetings. There were, I believe, 26 or 27 meetings over the course of a couple of years whereby they helped guide and provide a lot of assistance to the creation of this plan. Essentially, the goals, policies, and actions of the plan were created through that steering committee process and then brought back out in public meetings to be reviewed and discussed as we went forward.
What George is referring to, for those of you who follow at home again, is that the city was actually broadcasting those on Cable 16 for a long period of time.
Yes.
Yep.
And the result of that is the comprehensive plan, the document that has been presented to the Board of Aldermen.
Familiarize yourself with this one, folks. That will be out duly after the Board of Aldermen have their chance to comment on this.
So there's a copy of this draft available on the city website now.
Do you want to give the folks at home the link to that?
Sure, it's www.somervillema.gov/compplan, COMPPLAN. And if you look at that, there's a download of basically a short version of this that's about 26 pages, and the longer version that includes all the appendices, which is about 160. The 160, and you can download or print either copy. We have some copies.
That's
of the
a lot of
version,
paper, folks.
But yeah, the long one includes all of the policies and action statements that came out of the plan committee. But the basics of it, the community value statement that were done in a series of public meetings in 2009 and 2010, and the basic overarching numbers, which are on pages 16 and 17 of the plan, are the core of the essence of the document.
Yeah, the reason, George, I brought up the televised meetings is that, more often than not, some of the seniors who watch Cable 16 and watched this show, thank you very much, asked what are those meetings all about? You know, there's a lot of people giving their opinions about stuff. What is it all about? Well, this is what it was all about.
Yes.
Is that under Massachusetts law, cities and towns have to have a comprehensive plan.
Yes.
And do they say you have to have one for every 3 years or every 5 years, or what is it?
You know, I'm not sure it's specified in the law, but most people recommend that you do plans out about 20 years and that you review them every 5. So, but Somerville hasn't had a plan, and as long as we've been able to track.
Well, can I see that old document right there in front of you?
What we do, yes, sure.
George, I'm joking with George. You know, after I was cleaning out some stuff in the attic this past winter, I happened to find Planning Progress in Somerville, report of the planning board, and the date is February 1953. So there you go, George. We found the last one that was published.
I believe that may be it, because there certainly wasn't anything since then in our record.
You know, it was just an amazing. I had forked this over to George a while back and said, you know, take a look at it. And the first thing that George did was he held up the draft of his plan that he's been working on. I'm not making fun of it. And then he held up this, and he said, they're the exact same size. So all those years later, George, I mean, you know, there it is. So you had not only you guiding this as the major duomo, but you had your staff working on this, and then we had 60-something representatives from industry, private citizen, community groups, neighborhood associations. All those people came together over a period of time and talked about what they were familiar with, which was their neighborhood or their square or the development issues that they were involved with.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that strenuous project, because that the end result is here.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first part of that was just discussing what our shared values are as a community. And we did that with the committee, and then we did that with the city as a whole in a series of meetings that we held across the city. And that led us to developing a set of statements that basically were sort of the fundamental basis of the plan. Things like that we celebrate the diversity of our community. We foster our unique community spirit. We're looking to invest in our economic base, promote an accessible, inviting, and safe community where pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit riders. The issues about sustainability and about innovation. And that these are really, I think that even as we do changes and upgrades to this plan 5 years from now, I think these are so ingrained in the community as shared values that you'd likely see those remain over a long period of time. From there, the committee looked to say, okay, well, that's our next step. What are our goals? And we broke them into 5 subgroups. We let people select where they wanted to go. A group about neighborhoods, a group about squares and corridors, a group about transportation and infrastructure, a group about housing, and a group about resources, natural resources, educational resources. And we had those groups form a series of goals. And then under each of those goals, they said, well, what are the policies that we think should be set to bring each of those goals forward, and what set of actions need to come out in order to make that happen? There are 500-something action steps in the appendix of this plan.
Good luck with that.
Those came from that committee. But once you started to pull them back together, and we did this towards the end, we said, well, how do you implement this? So we did an implementation plan. So, for example, there are about 120 of those action steps deal with the zoning ordinance. So as an implementation step, you know, should this plan be blessed by the Board of Aldermen and the planning board, one of the things we would like to do is take a look at how the plan and the zoning ordinance match and have some conversations about that and move that forward as a next step. Another very key issue in all of this were a number of them that talked about the future Green Line stations. So as to do further planning, we want to look, we're already doing this at Innerbelt and Brickbottom, looking at having a public process around a station where we talk about what the future is of that station area and involve the neighborhood and figure out sort of what we think that area around a Green Line station will look like once that station opens, and once there may be some development in some areas and no development in other areas, and how that might come together and what that might do and how that might work. Pulling that all together, we then set big picture numbers on future growth and development for Somerville based upon all of that.
Mm-hmm. So let me try to boil this down just a little bit. So you have all these people in the room.
Yes.
There's no clear consensus because everybody's got their opinion on what they want to happen in their neighborhood. But the clear consensus is that the way the city has operated for all these years is with a vision of a comfortable place to live, easy access to public transportation, affordable, job-centric.
Yes.
I mean, nobody, no, you know, if you wanted to work in Somerville, you certainly wouldn't be living out at 495 someplace. So a lot of that stuff filters down, and you gel it into, this is what the vision is.
Yes.
But key to that is the rezoning of a lot of this stuff that you want to do. Rezoning of major portions of the eastern part of the city.
Well, to take a step back a bit, we start out with people sitting in a room together thinking, oh, these folks are all so different than us in their perspectives, and there isn't a lot of consensus there. But when you fundamentally look at the underlying basis of the plan, to make Somerville the most exceptional place to live, work, play, and raise a family.
Who said that?
That's something the mayor often says, and it's right on the cover of the plan, because it's something certainly that came out a lot in the process. And I think what you see is a lot of people saying, we saw it in the happiness survey last year. Yeah. We're doing a lot of things. A lot of things are going well in Somerville. Somerville is a place that a lot of people want to be. There's a lot of interest in the city. There's some innovative work here.
Crime is down. The trash is picked up. We have no snow plowing this winter.
We had snow plowing. It goes very well. I mean, last winter they did an incredible job. I've always been very impressed with the snow plowing in Somerville. But there are some issues that keep on coming up. One is jobs. We haven't had job growth in this city in 20 years.
Right.
And that is a big issue. Another is open space. We have an interest in having more available quality green space for people for recreation. Another issue is housing affordability, as Somerville has become such a place that so many people want to be.
Let me help you. When the mayor came on the show, I told him that he had single-handedly created this place to be a sexy city. So, I mean, it's true. When something becomes attractive and it becomes sexy, more people flock to it. And then, as a result of that, you have gentrification and it becomes unaffordable.
So the question then is, how do we preserve housing growth and housing affordability in such a way? But the other issue is that there were also a number of issues with where we have done housing growth in recent years, sort of how it fits the neighborhood, where it goes, sort of what the community character issues are around it. So if you could find a framework to balance those issues, to basically, for example, open space, it cost us about $1 million to renovate about an acre of a park to a high quality level. Yep. We don't have money like that to keep doing new parks all over the city, and that doesn't even account for the price of acquiring land. But if you look at a program like where we have the Assembly Square developer, where we have a development project that provides tax base but also provides quality, publicly accessible open space, you can start to find jobs. Yeah. You can start to find programs, start to find development, start to find strategies that actually encompass a lot of these while still not having a negative impact on the character of Somerville's neighborhoods. So you look at the pieces all together, and what you start to realize is there is a policy framework that pulls it all together. And it is about creating an extensive amount of job creation. It is about creating housing and affordable housing and open space, but at the same time pushing for a transit mix that puts half or more of new trips on transit, walking and biking rather than in cars, and also places 85% of the new growth in those transformational areas we were talking about. So essentially, we reached a plan that says that based upon all these goals and all these policies and all these actions, when we came back to the committee and said, we've looked at everything you've done, we've spread the numbers, we've looked at the mapping we did, we looked at the transportation map, and we basically said that over the next 20 years, we can work towards an aspirational goal of creating 30,000 new jobs in Somerville, 6,000 new housing units, of which 1,200 of them are affordable housing units, 125 acres of publicly accessible open space, of which we only have 180 today, put 50% of the new trips on walking, biking, and transit, and make sure 85% of that development falls in those transformational areas. That does require some zoning adjustment to the transformational areas, and also potentially some protection of the neighborhoods so that all of that balances out right. But the result of that is you start to build a method for which we can become more fiscally self-sufficient so that we can deliver safe streets, the snow plowing, the educational system we all deserve.
Well, you've got to have the cash to do all the things that people want you to do.
Right, and do all those things without necessarily being dependent on state aid that's become more and more unstable from year to year.
That's right. The mayor, I mean, George, it's no secret in the city, the mayor and I have butted heads over certain things, but, the one thing that we have a clear-cut view on is that in order to provide the services that the people of this city expect and demand, you have to have the revenue.
Right.
The revenue has to come from someplace, and he is loath to put it on the taxpayers. the property
The
owners.
current residential property owners,
Right,
yes.
right.
Yes.
So the only way to offset that is to bring in more industry. When I say industry, I'm talking about commercial development. I'm not talking about smokestacks in the sky.
And residential development creates a small. New residential development creates a small increase in tax base.
Right.
New commercial development creates a much larger increase in
Right.
tax base. And it also helps balance jobs and housing in the city, and hopefully provides the opportunity for more people in Somerville to be able, living in Somerville, to also be able to work in Somerville. So that's a significant opportunity that would be more available by having a larger job base in the city as a whole.
Now, key to that, I know that it's probably a discussion for a different show, but key to that is public transportation.
Oh, absolutely.
And the public transportation, the people like many of us who have advocated for the extension of the Green Line, we understand the upside. There is a downside to it. I mean, there are some downsides to bringing in mass transit in that scale into Somerville. But, most city planners will tell you, you can never guarantee that the best laid plans are going to work out the way that you want them to. Because now here it is, we have a beautiful document produced by you and residents of the city and business of the city, and the Green Line is pushed out to 2020, 2022. Every month I go by, I push it another year. But
Well, I believe they're saying 2018 to 2020 for the
yeah,
outer
good
end.
luck with that,
But
George. We'll have you back on in 2019.
And
How's
I
that?
will be happy to be here to talk about where we are at that point and the wonderful trains running straight through Somerville. But I really want to to the extent that there's an advantage of that, it's the advantage to allow us to continue to plan for it, be ready for it,
Right.
be organized for it,
Right.
do this station area planning through. We've had a wonderful opportunity in that we were the first community in Massachusetts issued a federal grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development under their Sustainable Communities program, a 3-year grant, and it's all based upon the idea of preparing for the Green Line. And
Yep.
it funded the completion of this plan, it's funding the station area planning activities, and it's funding a look at how the zoning code fits with those stationary plan activities, including staff and support to do that and be out in the community having those discussions. That's a big step to help prepare us to say when the Green Line opens, because if we do nothing, we may lose control over what happens around
That's
that
right.
station as it happens.
That's right.
We may.
Well, not to toot our horn down in the Lagoon Square District, but we saw that very clearly, that we had the 5 acres of open space at the Max Pack site.
Yes.
And that the way it was being presented to us as a neighborhood by the city was that you're going to be getting a Green Line stop. We can't tell you when,
will happen. Yep.
but transit-oriented developments are the way to go for these, 5 acre, 7 acre parcels that we have in the city.
Yes.
And that's what caused us to kind of endorse what the planning board at the time was doing, not under your tutelage, but another planning director, to say, we think by creating that density at that T-stop location
Yeah.
is the best way to go. Now, some people criticized us and said, you're putting the cart before the horse on this thing because you don't know if you're going to get a Lowell Street T-stop. So that's the double-edged sword.
Well, I think you will get a Lowell Street T-stop. The other advantage of MaxPac is that with the community path sitting right there, the walking distance to Davis is also very appealing to a lot of people as well, to the Red Line. But it does, hopefully the goal is it provides some vibrancy, some residents there that hopefully will support the Green Line stop, support the activity in Lagoon Square, and continue to see 5 acres of the city utilized in a way that will benefit the entire city as a whole.
Very nice segue. We've been talking about big parcels being developed in the eastern part of the city, but part of your responsibilities as the planning director, you also have the planning board responsibilities, and that brings us right back into the small neighborhoods.
Yes.
Where you have, maybe a 2-family or a 3-family that's looking to either expand or put dormers on or need variances. The first stop for that sometimes is the planning board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they're often through our office, either into the planning board or the zoning board of appeals, to do anything, to do renovations to a house, to change the number of units on a lot, to do those sort of things. That's probably the bread and butter of what my staff does every day is those sort of reviews. And we do a lot. What's interesting is it's all done on a case by case basis because we haven't really developed beyond the findings of the zoning ordinance really specific design expectations for what those are over time. I think our staff has started. We put together a guideline for dormers. We put together documents to start to say, let's be a little bit more meticulous about how we do this. But one of the things that the plan calls out for and that we are trying to work closer to is to be a little bit more predictable in what fits in a Somerville neighborhood and what doesn't fit in a Somerville neighborhood, so that I think we on our staff kind of know what our expectations are. There are certain things that we, certain dormer types and certain additions that we say, okay, that's not going to have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood. Well, there are certain others where we say it does, and I think there's come to be an understanding of that. But certainly the plan allows the opportunity to really step back, look at the zoning code, look at our guideline documents, and say, how can we make sure that we are establishing an expectation so that things are a little more predictable?
Yeah. You use, that's an excellent word to use, George. You would say to me, thank you, Joe, I use it a lot. It's an excellent word to use when it comes to planning and when it comes to zoning in this city. Because more times than not, at community meetings that I'm at, or people I've talked to, they say, well, it's not predictable.
Right.
Especially from small contractors when they go into inspectional services and then they're told you have to go to the planning board, you have to go to the zoning board of appeals. Some of these contractors have been around for a long time.
Yes.
And what's happened in the past, not under your guidance, George, but what's happened in the past is that sometimes it tends to change from planning director to planning director, or from inspectional services head to inspectional services head. And I think it's an excellent goal to have predictability so that when newcomers who come into the city and they buy, they know what they can and cannot do to their properties. When contractors come in to do work for Somerville homeowners or businesses, they know in advance what they can and cannot do. How much of the comprehensive plan deals with that within the neighborhoods?
Well, there's an entire chapter of both goals and action steps on neighborhoods, and it talks quite a bit about that. I actually, in the early parts of these meetings, was the city coordinator on the neighborhoods committee, so I sat through every one of those committees meetings. We had a lot of discussion about that issue exactly. And we got some basic ideas on what people's expectations are of what is reasonable infill, of what is reasonable extensions to housing. But there were definitely a lot of recommendations that came out of that to start to memorialize some of those expectations into design standards and into documents. One of the things we started talking about in the office, and it's mentioned in here, is the idea of something called form-based zoning, which basically puts zoning more focused on the idea of kind of what the urban form of a neighborhood is. We're
not going to get too technical, brother. I told you, we have to keep it to 28 minutes, and we're coming up on that. But I would highly recommend, George. I mean, I've had limited dealings with you,
yes.
But George has a terrific staff up at Somerville City Hall. This is a document that I hope all of you who are interested in the future on what shape this city is going to take. I mean, with discussions about the Green Line, discussions about redevelopment, discussions about anything that's coming forward, I would highly recommend that you go online, look at this document, download what you want. I want to thank you, George. George Proakis has been our guest tonight. He is the Director of Planning for the City of Somerville. As always, Somerville, stay safe, stay informed. And TEDx is this Saturday at the Arts at the Armory on Highland Avenue. Sounds like a great show. Yours truly will be up there emceeing. See you. Good night.